first time ever.
Hear you loud and clearly.
And it was going place.
That stuff's great.
But the game is not a roguelike.
Boomer shooter.
Bang.
Hello, this is John St. John, and you're listening to KEEP in the Keep, bringing you all the hits from the finest in the world of gaming and entertainment. Now sit back and relax as the drowned god Cthulhu lulls your mind with the tastiest talk in town.
Welcome to another chapter of In the Keep podcast. I'm your very own prophet of the drowned god, the Motherlode. The Keep is a collective of gaming enthusiasts compelled by the drowned god Cthulhu to frag and jib one another into oblivion for all eternity. If you are involved in any business of any kind, and I don't mean like you own a business, necessarily. It doesn't have to be an LLC or a corporation or anything like that. You surely understand the power and the importance and the reverence that needs to be given to marketing. And I feel that the theme of the conversation you're about to hear between myself and Starlight Skyes revolves heavily around how's the right way to go about that. And not only that, but the fact that some people who are content creators fail maybe to recognize that. And that is not a criticism on anyone. It's just a way of me telling you that this is a really, really useful episode that is so full and rich of knowledge from Starlight that, you can't miss it. It's so good. Just the sheer amount of information that she brought to the table with her to discuss this was mind-blowing. And for those of you who don't know who Starlight is, she is the communications director for Dread XP. We've had Ted Hitchke on before, to promote the Dread X collection and everything like that, but they've gone so far beyond what that original conversation was now, and a lot of that can be accredited to the amazing work that people like Starlight Skyes does. I got to know Alex Pixie at 3D Realms when we were working on Realms Deep, and I saw the same thing. Like, these people that you don't hear about all the time. You go on Twitter, you see 3D Realms, you see the brand, you see, or the spokesperson, whoever that is, for 3D Realms, that's Fred. For Dread XP, that's Ted often. But Starlight and Alex are so integral to the success of these companies. Like these companies could not do what they do. Literally, the world would stop turning for their marketing if either of these two wonderful people just stopped doing what they did. And, every company's got someone like that, but we don't ever fucking talk about it. It's insane to me. So I jumped at the opportunity. This is not even something I sought out. Like, Starlight reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'd love to be a guest sometime." And I looked at her story and I was just like, yes, 100%. I would love to hear more about that. And it was so fucking great and refreshing to hear this wealth of knowledge communicated in such a articulate and easy to digest way. And honestly, when I listened back to this, editing it, I was like kind of blown away by some of the insights I started having. I think I literally got smarter by having this conversation with Starlight. So I hope you enjoy it too. I'm going to play some music from the Dread X collection. This is by Victor Kraus. And when it's over, you will be in the Keep with Starlight Skies.
Hi, I'm Starlight Skyes, and I'm the Communications Director of Dread XP. So how I became where I am today was about 10 years ago, I was in college, I learned 3D modeling for environmental art, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go into the industry, make video games and do environmental art. And then once I get in there, I realized that I wanted to try marketing and see how that went, and it like slowly built up over time. I started Twitch streaming when I was in 2015, and I became partner within like 8 months of Twitch streaming. So I got to learn how to do marketing from a game dev side and a few other companies. And then I like also did content creation. And so I got like a well-rounded viewpoint of like how the industry works and how from different angles. And eventually that led me to JetXP.
So let's actually back that up a bit further. What made you want to study games and create games in the first place?
Well, I was like struggling with like, what do I do with my life, right? Like, what is my purpose? And I remembered like when I was like in my late teens, I used to write RPGs, and I was like, man, that'd be cool to make games. And then when I went to college, I like actually got some skills, and I was like, oh, I guess I can make games now. And that was it. Like, I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. I remember the exact moment while I was doing 3D modeling homework in class. Like, I was like, yep, this is my job. I'm gonna make this happen no matter what.
Yeah, I really love exploring that idea because, you know, a lot of people go through their entire lives and never fully realize like what their passion is. And so it's really special thing when, you know, someone figures that out early enough to actually pursue it. And, you know, even to go further on that tangent, like some people get later in life and then they figure out what it is, or they're like, oh, but I can never do that. And like, it's too late. And I think it's like never late, but yeah, it's really fucking awesome. I'm actually like kind of looking over your story a bit when you came into DreadX Collection, and I remember you tweeted when it came out that you had, you know, never actually gotten credited for a project before. What's that all about?
Well, in the industry, it's funny because the reason why I started doing marketing was because I was running this like local game dev group, and I'd done a lot of these, like a few communities for free. Or I just needed experience on like how to grow a community, because no job was going to hire me unless I had experience. But I couldn't get experience, like get paid for it. So I was like, okay, I'll just do it for free. And so I was doing these like local game dev groups. I also had a game dev group on Twitch, doing like getting a bunch of streamers that did game dev. And I just realized that nobody really appreciated it. So I had like my first job doing it like full time. I got like $800 a month, which was like nothing. And they never finished any games. And so, of course, I couldn't get credit on them. And then that just kept happening where I get these jobs and they'll be like, I hate social media. I don't know anything about building a community. That's your job. And so like I would try to do it, but then they wouldn't actually let me do my job because they didn't understand like the importance of that. They just knew that community was important. They knew like growing social media was important, but they didn't know why. And so that just kept happening. Job after job was just me being downplayed, and then eventually being let go because they just didn't see my value. So it was just incredibly frustrating to go through that, and also surprising because I thought that people, like I appreciated it. Obviously, I knew what I was doing and I knew the importance of it. And obviously, when people see DreadXP now, how we went from almost nothing to, you know, what we have now in such a short time, in a few months. Like, I remember at one point, Ted was like, who's my business partner, was like, you know, why are we losing like 30 followers a day? Is this bots? And I was like, no, it's just like, it's like the context of how you're putting the content together in Twitter. And I was like, just like, let me take the wheel. So he did. And like, now we have thousands of more followers since then.
Okay. So when you look at something like that and you say like, oh, but you're explaining it, you know, pretty quickly here, but
yeah,
it's the way that you're putting stuff out. What is your actual analysis of that? Like, what was he doing wrong that could be improved on?
Well, first of all, there's a million things with like the Twitter algorithm and also people's psychology. And I know that sounds manipulative, but I'm just putting it out there that marketing, and you have to do marketing for your podcast, and New Blood has to do marketing for their games. And so it's not an evil thing. It's simply just a way to get your message out there so people want to actually like get what you're trying to give to them. Like you're trying to create a value for them. And you just have to figure out how to give a value to them that they will understand and like want to be a part of. And so what I did differently was, first of all, and this is like not Ted's fault at all. This is like because it's just not intuitive. Like it's actually counterintuitive. first of all, you don't retweet everybody that mentions you ever, right? You have to be very strategic about how you retweet things. You have to figure out like, who is my audience, and like what does my audience want? And so like I really thought about, I didn't know much about specifically the horror community because it is a very much a niche of its like own people. It has its own content creators, it has its own developers, a little bit outside of the normal industry. When I go to PAX and E3, you don't see like horror games there that often. I never met anyone from the Blooper team myself. I have met like Gun, who did a Layers of Fear 2, like they're marketing for them, but I haven't met Blooper themselves. So anyways, so Ted was like retweeting everybody, and he was just like messaging and replying to all these people like he was like their best friend. And I was like, I've had a lot of this conversation with him. I was like, there's a huge difference between a personal brand and a company, a brand. And like, if a brand is talking to you like a friend, unless you're like Wendy's and really good at snark, then you're going to come across as kind of weird and kind of creepy to people. Because you're like, why is Wendy's talking to me about, this weird thing? I don't, this is kind of weird. I don't know if that makes sense. You don't want to get too personal on a company account. But you still want a personality though, because if you don't have any personality, then you're just a robot. And then people don't want to engage with you as a robot. But they also don't want to engage with you if you act too much like a person.
Yeah, that is very counterintuitive. I mean, you're literally naming off like 100 mistakes that I've made probably today. But this is a learning opportunity for me too. So yeah. I'm really curious, like what kind of things are you thinking of? So what do you do when you take over the account? What do you do that suddenly turns it around?
So what I do is, first of all, specifically, I could talk about like my personal brand versus like DreadXP, because I do use like my own personal brand in order to help promote DreadXP. So like, for example, I have like gone to like dozens of conventions to, get my face out there, to get my name out there, to just meet people and like learn things from the industry that I wouldn't learn just from the internet. Like Google's not going to tell you everything, and watching these GDC talks isn't going to tell you everything that you need to know. And so it's better to meet in person. So with my personal brand, because I knew so many people, I focused for myself on like cute animals and like giving advice about like marketing and game dev and business, and then like an occasional selfie of myself, and so that was my branding, and I kind of like stick to that. And so like I won't retweet everything that people tell me about myself, and like just everything I think is cool. I won't tweet out my lunch. I won't tweet out like my cat and my dog every day, because that just confuses people when you do that for branding. And I know people are like, ew, this is so gross, like so manipulative. Like some people are going to be like that. But honestly, if you don't put yourself out there and try, then you're just never going to see what works, because all of this takes experimentation. For DreadXP, I had like this whole document of branding for them. And for a company, again, you have to be like even more strategic of how you put things out there. So they asked me to build like positive community was the very first thing they asked me to do, because apparently horror doesn't have that.
It's not horror. Yeah. In fact, I would, in my analysis, just through what I've gone through and like talking to different people in different, gaming communities on this podcast, like the horror is actually one of the more positive like groups of people I've seen. I think it's just the internet, where people have this echo chamber and then they say negative things and that's what gets attention. But I don't think it's an issue with the horror community. I don't think it's if you have any group of, any number of people, right? Just call it 100.
Yeah.
You're going to have at least a couple of dipshits in there, and they're just going to be the one, the people who, are busy and have lives and all that kind of shit. They're not going to leave a comment. They're just going to move on with their day.
Yeah.
So it like makes it look like there's a lot of negativity, but in fact, it's just indifference other than the negativity, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, I should say it like this, like there's a lot of like people that like horror out there that are just like good people that just happen to like that genre. Right. And that's cool, but that's very different. I guess an audience is different than a community. So I think you're talking about, I think the horror audience that likes horror in general are like really lovely people, but there wasn't a Discord. Like I was going like to horror Discords, and they were like fighting about like Silent Hill versus Resident Evil. What's the best Resident Evil game? What's the most goriest, scariest movie? And like they cared about all these like things and went back and forth with like debating on this stuff. And then like the people, like you said, the indifferent people that just wanted to make friends and like chill out, like they didn't know what to say. They didn't have anything to contribute because they don't care. So they would just like leave that Discord or just like join it, but like never participate in anything. And so like building a community means like you're putting like-minded people together that actually wanted to talk to each other and make friends. And in my case, it was about specifically indie horror games because indie horror developers are very much most of the time solo. And Puppet Combo does have like help. Like he does have people that makes games with him, but most horror people just kind of like do it on their own, maybe one or two people. But they don't go to conventions. They're not part of the greater industry. I don't see them having like long, back and forth with like Sony or Nintendo. So they kind of like, they don't even know that stuff's available to them because they don't really talk to a lot of people in the industry to know like what to do to become things like Hyper Light Drifter and Cuphead and, getting those kind of like big deals with companies. And also like a lot of stuff in horror games is like always propelled by content creators and not like the big three consoles, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like that's the true. I don't think of just the horror community, but the independent, gaming community in general. A lot of them, like for instance, I had a good pal, MK Schmidt, on the show recently. His episode will air before yours, I think, but whatever. And he, he's an older guy and he's just now kind of like getting into the, I'm publishing my own games thing. And he didn't even, know that there was this whole community on Discord and Twitter, that he could interact with at all. He was literally just working on this stuff alone with no contact, really with anyone else that was doing the same thing he's doing. And yeah, like that is so true that a lot of these guys are, I don't know. I don't want to make a broad brush statement about just game developers in general, but especially indie developers. They tend to be kind of lone wolf people who don't see the value in exactly what you're doing, that they would greatly benefit from. I have several examples of this. Who was his name? ProJab. Robert, who was working on White Hell. He's kind of one of those programmer people who's just, I don't like communities. I don't see a value in it. And I'm like, yeah, but how are you going to sell your fucking game?
I've heard this many times that people have the attitude and they will hire me with that attitude and they expect me to just create miracles for them. And it takes time because it has to be organic because, okay, so let's look at the industry is completely different than it was 20 years ago. And it's so great that all of these developers have tools nowadays to make things a lot more accessible for themselves, like Unity, Unreal, Game Maker. All of these things are a lot easier to get into more than ever before. You can like watch tutorials on YouTube. You can make like magic happen all by yourself. But the thing is like, just because there's a difference between like hobby game dev and making a commercial product. Those are two different things. And you can like kill yourself by trying to cross those two streams. So hobby game dev is you make whatever you want and you just don't care because it's like for yourself. Okay. And that doesn't come with anything. And so that's why Itch has like all of those free games that people love. That's artistic and weird because they don't have to like charge anything because they just made it for themselves and it's out there. That's cool. But if you want to make a commercial game that makes money, you should at least try to see if like you can do things like building community and growing social media or like joining somebody else's community like Haunted PS1 or even like Wholesome Games. I know that's the opposite of most people on this podcast, Wholesome Game community, but it's absolutely gigantic. That is a huge community. And I've seen so many people that try to take advantage of that community to propel their game forward. They don't want to actually participate in the community. And that community does not appreciate that. Like, they're like, do you want help with like Unity stuff and like getting advice? Like you have to actually talk to us and like would be happy to do that. Just like, don't try to like use people in that way. So like, I would just say that it's not scary. Like everything is uncomfortable until it's not comfortable, if that makes sense. And so talking to other developers and joining a community can be very uncomfortable because you can make all sorts of excuses. Like, I'm socially inept. So was I. I was also socially awkward. I was also a nerd. But I knew I wanted to be successful, so I did everything I possibly could to make that happen. And now I have the skill set that, I'm like, whoops, now I have skills and I actually know what I'm doing, and now I'm putting this all together. And now I've like kind of focused on like helping other developers see that this isn't so scary. I just did a talk earlier this year about the mystery behind marketing, and like my talk was actually like, there is no mystery. Everyone's just a person.
No, it's really strange. Like I recall the first time I was ever like interviewed as the Motherlode, and I was asked like, so what is it you do? And I realized in that moment, because it's like you go to sleep and then you wake up the next day and you have this gigantic set of skills that you didn't possess before.
Yeah.
It's so strange. Like, none of this is like, I didn't go to college. I didn't do any of that shit. I just became obsessed and worked my ass off to get where we are now, which is, humble, but it's a place and I'm happy to be here. But it is very strange. Like how do you, in your opinion, like take your set of skills and market that to a company? Like when you put a resume together, what does it say?
Well, for me specifically, if you want to do community management, and I'm a communications director, by the way, because I don't just like manage the social media. I don't just make content. Like I actually tell people what to do. Like my job is to set up systems for the company. Like I have to actually create guidelines, and that's how I got the job. Wasn't just like, who do you know? And like, do you know how to make a Google spreadsheet? Like it wasn't like that.
Right.
Or like, what company did you work for? And like, I did do stuff for companies like Super Hot. So I do have experience at, bigger name things, name brand things, not just like smaller studios or not just things for myself. And I've done like a lot of consultation for like a lot of studios. But how I got my job at DreadXP, and this is advice for everybody, is that when you're going in for an interview, and I've done interviews with like companies like Double Fine and like Yacht Club that makes like Shovel Knight and stuff, is that it's not about you impressing them with like, who do you know or what do you do? It's about how can you bring value to that company? And so what I did was I got out like a notepad program, and then I screen shared and I just like listed out all of the things that I could do for them. So I was like, I can give you data analytics and grow in social media. I can create content for you. I can work with influencers for you and I can create branding for you, because creating branding and creating content is two different things. And like making a voice for your company so that it's consistent and it makes sense. So like, for example, our branding is not like hardcore. Like there's too many like slasher, hardcore, gory, like kind of like ideas of horror,
Right.
like Halloween, the movie. Like Bloody Disgusting, Fangoria, they already do that. And so like I was like, okay, we're gonna do the late teen. We're gonna do like Nightmare Before Christmas. We're gonna do Beetlejuice. We're gonna do Stranger Things. Like that's the kind of horror we're gonna do. Are You Afraid of the Dark and Scary Things to Tell in the Dark? Like kind of that like nostalgic childhood, but also make it positive. So it's like creepy, it's scary, it's unsettling, but it's not like gory or like super scary. And that has worked super well because there isn't much companies that are going that angle in the market like right now. And so, and it was like actually Ted that wanted to do like spoopy, like cute, scary. And I was like, okay, like I agree. That wasn't my idea. That was his.
Yeah. I remember when he messaged me and said like, hey, we're changing some of the branding and like, here's the new logo.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately was like, yeah, that's the direction to go in, because as you said before, like DreadX kind of just looked like any other website that does horror stuff. It didn't really stand out as much. Yeah. So to have that, and this is really basic marketing shit, but you have to stand out somehow. You have to look different than every other thing that's trying to sell something adjacent to what you're selling. So do you then define like what kinds of products you're going to sell? Like, so do you have a
Absolutely.
say in, okay.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
No, I guess my question is like, if you're looking at a game and it doesn't fit that particular, like if it does have gore and slasher shit in it, like, does that not work for the company at all now? Do you not put that in the DreadX collection because it's not like on that brand, or?
Well, when it comes to the collections, I'm just like, I don't care too much, when it comes to the collections, because the collections, there's so many different games that the developers are able to do a lot of weird experimental and like they're able to like flex their skills of creativity when they're doing our collections, because they're not beholden to like one product, and so that one product has to sell that's like a lot of heavy stuff, but there's several different things that different people can try, and different people have different tastes. Personally, I love all of the games, and like I think all of them are the best because I know the developers worked really hard on it, and I know their thought process and like the reasons for why they made the game that they did. And since I respect the developer's vision, like I like all the games. But there, for example, there's one of our most popular. Okay, so I'll do this first one. Scythe Dev Team did the game called To the End of Days.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw that, but it's probably your goriest game in the second collection. People's heads explode, like there's blood, and you've got an axe shotgun, and you're just like destroying cultists left and right. Okay, it's a pretty violent game, and we're like, cool. Like me and Ted are like, this is fun, awesome, like good cinematics, okay, cool, awesome. But then there's also Sucker for Love. And at first I was like worried because I'm like, is this an actual hentai game? Oh, like, because it's a dating game about you're dating Cthulhu, and she's got a bodacious body. She's very curvy, but she's got a tentacle face. Like it's a Cthulhu squid face. And the developer Akabaka was so worried. He's like, oh my God, do people think she's ugly? Like, do people not like her? And because she's like green and she's got like tentacle arms and tentacle legs. But we're like, no, you drew her. She's very anime. Like it works. And it did. Like it's like absolutely stupidly popular. And because she's like a squid face and not like a normal like anime girl, I think that makes her even like more different than like other anime dating games.
It is the one and only waifu game I've ever touched ever in my life. And probably will be the only one unless there's a sequel. So.
Yeah, I'm not into those either. So I totally get you. But that's the beauty of that game. It's like it's not just about dating her. Like there is spoopy, scary parts to that game. Like there is like a tension there, and that is actually scary. And like he doesn't think so. It's really funny talking to him. He's like, but I'm like, compared to like most other visual novels, like this has more mechanics and tension in it than like others, which is just like like high school drama. And instead of like End of the World, which is literally his game.
I've played everything from both collections and a lot of other stuff that the many developers that I've either learned about or followed into those, like I've played their other stuff as well. And now I really love, like I've told Ted numerous times, like I love the whole concept of the DreadX collection. Like I described it as like it's CBGBs, but for horror developers. And, eventually there's going to be like this alumni class of like, they were in the DreadX collection back in the day kind of thing. It's such a cool way to like get their names out there and to promote them while also promoting yourself and your own brand. But I guess like when you're marketing something like that or any game for these guys, I don't know, like I don't want to get too far into like what the plans are because I feel like you're not allowed to talk about a lot.
Oh, I can. I want to because I want to help developers. Like that's been my whole shtick. Is that I've had the same conversations over and over again with companies that are paying me with consulting to students that I'm talking to in colleges, like, and also talking to veterans who have done the same thing for like 10 years at a AAA studio. Then they want to become indie and they don't understand like what they're getting themselves into from AAA to indie because it's both game development, but it's all very different game development because you don't have like a huge marketing budget and you're all by yourself now. You don't have all that support and you don't have the IP, which is like the branding from like the bigger games that you've worked on. So you don't have that Resident Evil IP. So, and nobody cares about your IP. Like you're creating these new characters, you're creating this new world. How do you get people to care about that? Right. And so with the DreadX collection, everything is very intentional. It seems very logical. It seems like, well, of course DreadX collection would do that. But like, actually I have to sit down and really think about like, what does the audience actually care about? What do I need to focus on? I don't have all the money in the world. I don't have all the time in the world. Me and Ted are the only full-time employees of DreadX. So we have to like spread a lot of the jobs between us. And also working with all these developers means we have to work with a lot of personalities. and a lot of insecurities and like, you know, good times, bad times, like all of that stuff. Like we're very personable because not only like I consider like our customers like also our developers, because I want to make sure that when they work with us, that they like us and that they're enjoying the process and that they want to come back and they want to tell other developers that it was great. Like I got paid, I made some friends, I got a community, somebody marketed my game for them, we give them QA, you know, all of that stuff. So getting into the plans specifically of your question of like, what is DreadX is doing, is that eventually we are, and I told this to many people, we are doing bigger games. We're not just doing the collections. This was all a big experiment. Nobody has done this before. Like I could not go to any of my friends that work at like, I have a whole Discord of community and marketing people and PR people that I can talk to about like, what would you do if X, Y, and Z, right? I can't do this in a lot of the situation because nobody's done these collections like this before. So I'm inventing all of this. I'm just like throwing darts on the wall and hoping that they make it. I'm like, please make this tweet work. Like, please make the likes. And thankfully, thanks to formatting and like the artists that I hire and like my vision of like how I want things to look on social media, how I want things to be on Discord, and how I want it to tie into the games, like it seems to my vision seems to like come together. I mean, and Ted too, like I have to talk with Ted. We have to agree on like, is this vision right? Okay. Yes, it is. Great. Let's do this. Like we have to be consistent with each other. I can't just do things on my own. Like Ted needs, we need to approve of each other ideas and make sure that we're collectively making this work. I don't know if this is making any sense, but for we are making bigger games eventually because this is just we just wanted to get games out there. If we just sold a bunch of we just gave a bunch of developers money and told them to make games, it wouldn't work. Like it has to have a structure to it. And if we just had one developer make one big game in 2 months, that also wouldn't work. So the only way that Ted could see to make games like as quickly as possible and have people actually want to buy it is like the collections and how they worked out. And that with like my marketing know-how, like I actually got people to care about it. And a lot of that also has to do with like all the connections and contacts that I have in the industry that I've made over the years, like leading up to me working at DreadXP. So I can call in like a lot of favors to a lot of developers and be like, hey, could you like look at my game and tell me what you think? And content creators, because I am, you know, I'm a Twitch partner, so I knew a lot of content creators. And so, you know, I use my personal brand to help market the games. So that's why it's important to do both.
So my question essentially is like the way I'm looking at it from the outside and just kind of analyzing it, thinking like putting my business cap on. Mm-hmm. You guys are, you know, in this position now where you've, you know, done business with a bunch of really talented game developers. And so then it seems like the natural next step is to pick the ones that you like best and have them either do a full length version of like, for me, okay, if I were going to hire somebody, I'd be like, all right, Malik, you fucking finish The Outsiders and get after it. Mm-hmm. And here's a team and here's a budget and here's a time period and do it. Is that the sort of thing we can expect, or is there a more broad plan?
Well, we're going to have a showcase at the end of this month, which is on Halloween. We will have a showcase on YouTube. So if you follow like dreadxp.com, then you'll get, I'll also post it on the Discord and social media. So yeah. And so in the showcase, that's when we're going to show like the projects that we're going to do next. And I'll just say that one of the games is something the first game the big game we're going to come out, like I can't say what it is, obviously, who we're working with, but I'll say that it'll be very surprising. But this developer's already been working on the game for a while. And then we're going to have a completely new IP. It'll be a developer we worked with before, but a new IP. Just
so we're clear, this will air after Halloween, so you can talk about it in the past tense.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Yeah. So if you saw the DreadXP showcase, then you'll see that we showed 3 projects. One's a brand new IP that like, it's a developer we've already worked with, but we asked him to come up with like a totally new concept for us, like, so that we can like start fresh with that one. One of it's a game from one of our collections that we are expanding to. And then one of them is from like the person was already halfway through development and they just needed some money. They just needed some push, because there's a lot of, again, solo developers out there that have games, but they don't know what to do with them. And they want a publisher, but they don't know what to ask for the publisher. They're not sure what the plan is. And I just want to say that it's incredible. Like me and Ted have to turn down people all the time. We have to turn down voice actors. We have to turn down writers. We have to turn down like people, like technical people, because we just don't have enough money or time to do all of the projects that we want to do. It's our first year. So we have to turn down a lot of our almost all of our developers like say that they're really excited about our games. They like their game. They'd like to expand them. But we have to be very strategic. We can't have too many projects because then we'd be telltale and then we shut down. So a business, you can't expand too fast in business. So you have to like be able to handle what you have like right in front of you, but make sure that you go deep and not wide, and make sure whatever it is that you have, that you know what to do with it, like how to get that audience and how to sell it so that you can make more money, so that you can do like future products.
No, that all sounds exactly correct to me. I just, I am looking forward to seeing more about this past tense thing.
Yes,
but no, it's so cool. What's for like just particularly with you, like what's it been like working with Ted? Because I love Ted.
Ted is like absolutely one of the best people ever. I think because he's had like, both of us have had a very rough life, and for me it was like being a woman in the game industry was really tough and also like wanting to do marketing, like it just, nobody took me seriously, and I felt like I had to claw my way to any sort of semblance of respect, and yeah, it was just like really difficult to get recognized. For him, he loves to talk about the fact, he was a former addict, and every single podcast we do, he talks about it. So this is not news if you've heard Ted talk about it before. And
that's his way of dealing with it, right? It's just like, hey, this is my story. And honestly, some of them are fucking hilarious stories. Like,
yeah,
that's what I enjoy about it. He's like Joey Diaz, just talking about like, well, back in the day, I used to do blow off of hookers. And
for him, it's I used to sleep in dumpsters. Like that's his tagline. Hi, I'm Ted. I used to sleep in dumpsters. Yeah, he does have a lot of hilarious stories, but it's all good because it was all a learning experience, and it made him have gratitude. It made him appreciate people. It makes him have empathy for other people, and that makes him like a great person to work with. And when he hired me, he just wanted a community manager, somebody to make content. But then like once he realized like, oh, she has contacts and she knows how to do business stuff. Like basically we became business partners because I was telling him what to do a lot of the time, but he was also telling me what to do. So it was like a very like codependent relationship because there's both like skill sets we needed from each other. And like, for example, he's very extroverted. And so he's really good at dealing with just the people in general, making them feel secure with themselves, making them feel comfortable with like what they're doing. And then, for me, it was just like, spreadsheets, organization, all the non-fun stuff. It's like much better to talk with people about like their day-to-day and just make them feel comfortable than it is to put together analytics. That's for sure. And so, yeah, we just appreciate each other's like skill set and we complement each other well. Ted is like wonderful. And he is really funny. He's very charismatic. And I think the best thing about him is like, he knows how to give a compliment. And he knows how to make people like feel good about themselves. And I just admire him about that. And also he works hard. Like both of us have an insane work ethic. We both go hard and like in a way that like nobody else does because it's like our business and we wanted to see it succeed. So we're going to go like the extra mile and like basically all the stuff that you don't see, we do, but it's still needed.
What I like the most about Ted is that he feels like a relic from an age that no longer exists. Like the way that he interviews people is very much in that old, like almost a radio broadcaster style interview and, talking in a certain way. And he has a certain, he just has a certain charisma that you don't see a lot in content creators today. Or if they do, it feels contrived. Like it feels like they're trying to imitate it. And he feels such an honest person. Yeah. Like, it's just like if you start off a conversation like I used to sleep in dumpsters, we're on the same, we're on the same playing field at that point. But it's really cool, and I think that as you said earlier about using your personal brand to help promote your brand is huge because with people like you and people like Ted, when people have a warm fuzzy feeling about you guys, that makes me want to support your projects.
Okay, so back in, like, yes, that's all true. And I want to add on to what you just said.
Go ahead.
So back in, I'd say like 5 years ago, the industry was a completely different place. So if you're watching things like, there's this like indie game, the movie, is where a lot of people are like, this is what a game dev is like. That was made in like 2012, I think. So that's completely outdated look of like how the industry works. And back in those days, people wanted E3. They wanted the commercial game dev. They wanted that AAA polish, that sort of thing. Nowadays, people want memes. They want relatability. They want humans, because people feel screwed over with like microtransactions and live services and the lack of like single player games and like greedy game dev companies, not indies, because indies, can't get away with the stuff that like Rockstar and EA can. Yeah. So like, if you want to succeed in this day's world, do not act like a corporation. Don't act like a robot. Don't work like an entity. Like, you have to be a human and be relatable. And just like look at like how Wendy's does their, like, nobody cared about hamburgers like in Wendy's or whatever, but like the fact that they're really snarky and they have a personality helps them sell burgers, which sounds really counterintuitive. But it does work because it makes people interested in them.
I think Travis Scott is a fucking genius. Like, putting your name on a McDonald's burger, like, that's very, I mean, what is he doing? He's promoting himself as a rapper by putting his name on Reese's Puffs and on McDonald's. And it's gotten to the point where it's like, I wasn't even aware that McDonald's couldn't be further from my peripheral. But then, like, what? There's a rapper with a McDonald's burger now? Or a Reese's fucking Puff. Like, my wife buys those all the time and she loves them. And then this, like, who the fuck is that? And then people are like looking up him, or vice versa. Fans of his are going out and buying that project. It's like genius. But it's exactly what you're talking about. He's selling his personality as a brand to sell other brands. Yeah.
And like, people think that that's really like scummy or whatever. But the truth is like, do you want to make money? Like, that's my question to you. And you can still make money and have integrity too, because plenty of other, like, I'd say like mid-level indie studios like do that all the time. Where they need to make money, and so they'll do what they can. And we need to stop like hating each other for trying to make money. Okay. Like, for example, for the collections, some people are mad because the Haunted PS1 demo disc was free. But like, they can't sell that demo disc because, first of all, they have to go through logistics on like, how do they pay the developers individually for that disc, right? Also, who gets the money for the Haunted PS1 disc, like, said that sort of thing. So there's all this logistics that you have to do when you're creating things like these collections. Also, we pay our developers up front. Like, we're not just giving them exposure. That's why, like, there's a difference between a community and a business. And then, but some people were mad at us because we actually charged money for our collections. But we're like, yeah, because we're actually supporting developers here, like, financially. Like, Haunted PS1 obviously supports their developers as well, but we're actually supporting them financially. So it's going to be different, right? But people like just look at games and they think they're all the same. But do you want? I don't know. Do you like video games? Do you want these developers to make more of these horror games? Then they need to pay their rent. But yeah. Our negative comments on Steam is usually like, why aren't these games free?
Yeah, that's just a really, to be frank, immature and not very well thought out point of view. So I don't really pay any attention to that point of, like, we get that a lot, especially in my community. Developers that work with the Doom engine will get a mountain of shit if they publish, and try to sell you something from Doom. And we have been like working to change that stigma over time, because it's like, oh, you're not supposed to charge for an open source engine. I'm like, what's the fucking difference in this and Unity or anything else? It's just the fact that this person did work to sell you something, to give you the gift of playing a piece of art that you want. So, and you just think that they should just do that for free with no regard to, like, that's insane. It's not even an argument worth having. It's just completely ridiculous.
But here's the thing. People are always logical, okay? Because people can make up reasons for everything. So to them, they're like, well, Haunted PS1 is free, so DreadX Collection should be free because it's a collection of games. Like, so logically, I understand what they're saying. But, they don't understand that it's a completely different business model, because like Honda PS1, it's PlayStation 1. They can't actually sell things because of that that PlayStation, because Sony will get them and they know that. But also that's what brings people to the community, because you understand that they're making like PlayStation look like games that look like PlayStation. Style. Yeah, it has a certain look to it, and so they're just selling the look, but it has that name to it. So it's like a kind of like a weird catch-22 with them. But you know what? It's all good. Like having like people are like, are they your rivals? I'm like, no, like they're our friends. Like we hired a lot of them to do the third collection. So we love Haunted PS1. We love their games. We love that community. They're fantastic. And they do things differently than we do. That's both needed, like for developers, like basically getting started and like making games themselves. That's a good way to do that, is going through that community than just doing it on your own. But like we're here to like make money and to support developers financially, and to basically, I want to lift up the stigma of like horror games in general, because again, like just like movies, just like Hollywood, horror movies are not regarded as fine art as much as like dramas or like period pieces. Like for example, Get Out did win Academy Award, but Midsummer didn't, and Hereditary didn't, and those movies are amazing and artistic. The Lighthouse didn't. When they won awards, but it wasn't like the top Academy, because horror is not looked at as like fine art. And the same thing with games. Like you don't see horror games as like IGF Game of the Year, right? You see like RPGs do that. So like I'm trying to like get rid of that stigma and get people to appreciate experimental indie horror games, because that's where like a lot of the creative things are happening in the industry. I
think that a lot of people, just in general, there's a whole giant majority of people who simply don't want to be scared by the art that they enjoy. But then there's obviously a huge market for the people who do. So is it ever going to be like, could horror ever be the flagship of an art form, like film or games or whatever? I think it is exactly where it's supposed to be. I don't know that there's a stigma to break, because if you're selling horror, people who like horror already know that. And people who don't want that, like, then are you trying to talk them into wanting to be scared? I don't know if that would work.
I don't necessarily agree with that, because there's games like Gone Home, which is actually kind of a horror story, but that was a commercially successful indie game, but it just wasn't sold as a horror story. Gone Home was a game that came out a while ago, and it actually was, I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'll just say, because you guys can play it, but it was kind of a horror game. And you can even like question like games like Stanley Parable could be a horror game. And games like Dark Souls, which is hugely commercially viable, had horror elements to it. And so people just they need to basically just broaden their perspective of like what horror is, because horror is in all sorts of things that they love, because it's a way to create conflict. It's a way to create tension. Obviously, even like GTA had like gangs are not a friendly thing. Like being in a gang, Hitman, like you are the monster in Hitman, like because you are the one killing people, but it's done in a kind of like a fun, goofy way. And horror can be fun and goofy. So you're a stalker in Hitman, right? Like you're going around sneaking, and like even things like Metal Gear, there's definitely horror, like spooky, monstery things and Metal Gear. So people just need to change broaden their definition of like what horror is, because you see it all the time. You're just not recognizing it as like fear, but it is a story element that is in a lot of things.
No, I think we're actually on the same. We're just saying different words, but we're on the same page here. It's like it seems like for what you're explaining, that it's not a matter of talking people into liking horror. It's a matter of broadening their perspective of what they like.
Yes.
And seeing the horror in things that they already do like. That makes a lot more sense to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. That's something to think about. This is like every time I talk to a new person on the podcast, I go through like this insane learning experience where I have to like reconfigure my brain about opinions that I had. Like, I don't know. What are you looking for in terms of, all right, DreadX is going to sell a game. Will it be more of these like Gone Home style things where it's like not necessarily branded as horror? Or will it be like, because the brand right now, as I see it, is, and as I'm sure as many fans see it, is like, that's the horror game place.
There will be some subversion. Like, for
Okay.
example, if you look at games like Sucker for Love, it's literally pink. That's a pink game. It's a very cutesy game. And so it's also crossing like two different kinds of like the people that like anime and Persona, those type of games, but also people that like horror, like it's crossing the streams, and people love that. And it's kind of like
Synergy.
like Doki Doki Literature Club is also another example, or even like Undertale had some moments like that. Sorry, what was specifically the question? I want to be very like focused on that.
That's okay. I guess the question is essentially that is your vision of the type of game that DreadX will sell ultimately. You almost like your response like made me want to change the question. So you're focusing on crossing barriers by blending different styles. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, like here's the thing. If you just make a PT clone, if you just make an Outlast clone or make a Resident Evil clone, then people get bored of that. It's already been done. Like, why would I want to play rip off Outlast? I can just play Outlast, right? I've told this
Because
to a
it's
lot
cheaper.
of people. Well, that's for most people, they already bought Outlast, so it's like cheaper to them to already play the game that they already have than to buy a new indie game that's just a copycat of it, if that makes sense. Unless that copycat's really good, unless it's like, so you have to have that hook in the game. So what a hook is basically, and this is what I really care about. It's not whether it's 2D or 3D or what necessarily genre it is. It's like, is it interesting enough that I can find an audience for it? So it's something that is familiar but with a twist. So, for example, Binding of Isaac. Binding of Isaac is a ripoff of Legend of Zelda. So he's taken that dungeon areas and the mechanics of Legend of Zelda, the mechanics, which everybody knew those mechanics because like a lot of people played Zelda, so they felt very familiar with it. And the controls were really simple, but with Binding of Isaac, like he's reskinning those mechanics to have like a personal story about his life, but in a like cartoony, like weird way. And so that game blew up, not just because like, it's just a good game. Oh, it's just fun. Like, it's not just about having a fun or a good game, but it's like, it was a familiar mechanics, but like with a story and themes that people could understand and relate with, if that makes sense. And so that's what I look for and pitches, because like I have already turned down a pitch because the game was really good. It was awesome, but it was really slow burn. Like the main character was like an everyman, and right now in the industry, I also look at trends. People don't want everyman characters. People want characters that are unique and different, and like something different from themselves than just the typical middle-aged white guy that you've seen. And like we've seen this before, so people are looking for like different kinds of whatever. You get it.
That's really funny. I had like a very similar conversation with Scarecrow when he was on the podcast, because he's working on Graven, which is the new Slipgate Ironworks and 3D Realms game. And he was talking about the kind of rise and fall of the anti-hero stereotype.
Yes.
Right. Because the protagonist in Graven is like this priest who, and he's very righteous, and it's kind of like hearkening back to like, not an everyman, it's definitely a larger than life hero that we can't really expect to be, but a hero who's not like this morally compromised, like Daredevil kind of character, or the Punisher, right? Like the Punisher was really big there for a while. And that was like this, this character who is supposed to be a hero, but he's also a maniacal murderer. And I don't know, it's very interesting to me that, as you said, like analyzing the trends, because you've said, you're saying people don't want that, people don't want that middle-aged white guy. They don't want that, everyman character anymore. They want something more interesting. But then there's also the same pushback from other people that are like, no, I want my heroes to be heroes.
Well, the thing is, like, a lot of these people that want heroes to be like, I don't know, the anti-heroes and all that, they already have those games. They're like, well, I want Resident Evil. It's just like they already have Resident Evil, and they will just go back and play the nostalgia because it's comfy for them. So honestly, you can make whatever you want. You just got to know your audience and how to sell it. And if your game has like mediocre mechanics, mediocre character, and it takes like the story is really good, because that's what happened with the studio. Was like the story was good, and that was like but the artwork was just okay. Everything else about it was just very like, oh, it works, like it is good, but it wasn't like I need to be able to sell a game in 5 seconds. And if I can't sell your game in 5 seconds, if you can't give me like a punchy elevator pitch, then how am I supposed to do that on Twitter? How am I supposed to get those likes and people to care about your trailer if you can't tell me within 5 seconds that like why it's so appealing? If it's just like, look, it's another retro FPS. There's so many retro FPSs. What stands out? Also, I just want to say real quick what you're saying. Looking at the showcase, like I'm putting it together right now. Ted is focusing on the Dreadx Collection 3. I'm focusing on the showcase. So like we're kind of separate in our own projects right now. And there is like Padre series, which is about a priest. There's Lucifer Within Us, which I believe is also about a priest. And then you talked about Grieven, and I'm like, what is this? Like all of a sudden people are
3D Realms, not 3D Realms. New Blood has Faith too.
That's right.
Which is also about a priest. So priests are in. We can all agree.
Priests are in.
I'm an ordained minister. If anybody's looking for someone to perform their wedding ceremony, you can have the In the Keep wedding with the Cathalo logo in the background.
Sell it, man. Make that money. Hustle. Yes.
So is John St. John. John St. John is an ordained minister. Duke Nukem will perform at your wedding if you want.
I mean, some people love that. Oh, sorry, my watch is going off.
It's okay. I can take care of it with the magic of editing, or I'll just leave it in for atmosphere.
Okay.
Every day at
it's 1
10 o'clock, you're 1 o'clock, so you wake up at 1 p.m. No. Anyway, back to what you were saying. Priests are in. We know that. You're focusing on the sorry, Ted's focusing on the collection. You're focusing on the showcase itself.
Yes. Okay. So basically, the reason why, first of all, the showcase wasn't my idea because I was afraid because Haunted PS1 did something called Eek 3. We have a lot of crossover with our community, obviously, why I keep talking about it. But Eek 3 was like obviously E3, but like spooky. And it was fantastic. It was really good. And then also Wholesome Games, like the leader of that community also did Wholesome Direct, which is like Nintendo Direct. And so there's been a lot of indie showcases. Obviously Realms 3D had their own. And so I wanted to make sure that I distinguished myself from them. And so if you've already seen the showcase, that's awesome. You say it's going to definitely air. This is going to definitely air afterwards, right?
Yeah, I control when it airs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'll sign an NDA if you need me to, like if you just want to talk about it. I don't care either way.
I will say that so the direction that I did choose for the showcase was doing pixel art, like a pixel art narration and having it more like medieval, because that's also the theme of Dreadx Collection 3 is you're in a castle and you're walking through a castle, and like that's the hub world is like the graveyard, like the courtyard, and you're going to the graves and like lighting a candle, and then the ghost pops up, and then that's how you play the games. And so like I wanted to do a medieval theme also because like a lot of horror games are like medieval. Like there's a lot of spooky things like Dark Souls that happens. It was a dark time in human history, so it works out really well. And then also I wanted to do pixel art because I haven't seen any other showcase do pixel art, and there's a lot of like amazing pixel art artists out there that like I like wanted to see if I could like work with them. So I feel like that basically distinguish yourself, because I wanted to actually have a narrative to it, like some sort of story to it, instead of just like here's some like cool pretty graphics. Like I was watching the PlayStation showcase and it was just like very sterile. It was very like just meh, and everyone like was like, what is this? Like, what is going? This is like so like sci-fi and like strange, and that works for Sony because they are like a big corporation. But like for us, like I couldn't just make generic art, like generic horror Halloween stuff. I think would have been pretty boring.
Yeah. No, it's again that's why I gravitate toward the kind of not necessarily grassroots, but like the lower to mid or independent developers, because not only are they the ones that need help and are accessible, but that's definitely part of it, but also that it's not this soulless endeavor, it's this real, person behind that keyboard that's concerned honestly and truthfully with what you think of their product. And I don't know why. Like, that doesn't even take marketing. That's just like a feeling in my soul that I have. And I think a lot of people also feel that way. Earlier you said, you know, how the industry right now, people, you know, they want that personal connection. They want, you know, that kind of thing. I think that's what people wanted all along. They just didn't know that, you know, because it wasn't made available to them until like this recent era of, you know, social media and Twitch streaming and the ability to access the content creator directly. You had to rely on corporations to have that voice to be able to distribute it, period.
Yeah, the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Right now, right now the gatekeepers are now being influenced by indie games. Like, indie games are somewhat influenced by AAA, but mostly AAA is now recognizing the power of indies. So, for example, there's ID Xbox, that is a you know, a sub company of Xbox that only focuses on indie games for, you know, Game Pass. And they have like a whole YouTube channel of just helping indie developers. And everyone at, you know, in that company is super passionate about indies, and they act and feel like indies. Like, when you talk to them, it feels like any, but they just happen to have like the ID Xbox like logo on what it is that they do. So they're using the branding from Microsoft to help propel them, and they genuinely care. And I feel like that's because, like, again, like, indies keep making experimental cool things. They're more interesting. They're able to do things faster. But when you do like AAA with PlayStation, like, they do care about like their graphics and what they're doing, but like they also have to go through politics and bureaucracy. While indies don't have to do that, they can just make like their own vision. But when you go through like corporations, like, people think that being sterile and corporate is the way to go because that's how that people make money. But no, they make money from like all these other strategies that they do. How indies make money is, like you said before, having a clear vision of what they want. And me and Ted have a lot of vision. Like, we're not just like doing whatever. Like, we really like know what we're doing, and we're putting things into boxes that we want to put into, and then releasing them in the way that we think is like interesting, that people will like. And also, like, I can't wait for you to play Dreadx Collection 3. Obviously, after this airs, like, you'll play it at Dreadx Collection 3. Maybe that can be a different conversation of like what you think about it. But the story concludes with like for the 3 collections. Like, there is a somewhat of a conclusion to that story. It's also open-ended in case we make more. But you actually see the characters, like the Leo Wiggins, who's been like the voiceover the last like 2 collections. You kind of see more of who he is as a character and as a person, and like what's been going on with these collections, like what has this been like leading up to. So I'm really excited for you to say that. And I will say that Ted is on a limb with this. Like, the story is very esoteric. It's very out there. It deals with like big metaphorical like issues and questions, but also like basic human psychology. And I'm just like, all right, Ted, you know, pop off, you know.
Everything with Ted is tied to like the big, you know, there's something bigger than just me in the, you know, involved in this. It's all. Yeah. One day we're gonna find out that he's like, who's that? The guy from Blink-182. He's like, yeah, I have regular meetings at the Pentagon with war generals talking about UFOs, like that.
Oh, Ted would love that.
For all we know, that's what he's doing right now. Like,
yeah, I'm really excited. I think people are gonna love it. The like the medieval castle theme, the esoteric like weird storyline. It's something like there's something to really like dig your teeth into. But also, if you just like want to play games, like, you got that too. Like, you can do it however you want.
So, have you seen the episode of South Park where Jimmy is asked to? It's basically a spoof of Blade Runner, but he has to talk to this girl in a room who is an AI, and he's got to determine, you know, like he's basically guessing like what's an ad and, you know, what's not an ad. And then he realizes at some point that the girl talking to him is an advertisement herself. She is designed like the Twitter AI to try to sell you something. Mm-hmm. So I'm hesitant to, like what you were bringing up about like the Xbox indie forums. Like, I'm certain that the people who are hired to run that program, right, are very passionate about what they do. I'm also certain that they probably turn out a really good product. But I'm also scared of products like that, because ultimately what I see is the corporation has seen what works, you know, for everyone else that's not them, and is just going to then extract that route of money by using its bigger outreach program to do that. So then like, it becomes a question, and this is not a criticism. It's just like is it good that they are helping get those, independent people platform that they can sell their shit on? Or is it bad because they're sticking their bendy straw into their souls and slurping it all out? I don't know. I don't see that problem with you guys at all. Like that's what I'm getting at. That's where I stand in general.
Yeah.
I've loved literally from the first night that I played Outsiders before Dread X1 came out to right now. I've loved everything you guys have done, and I just genuinely think it's awesome. And if people haven't already picked up Dread X3 upon hearing this, I hope that they rush out immediately and go buy it, because it's a really fucking cool project. All the way around.
Yay. Thank you so much.
No problem. Go ahead.
Yeah. I just hope that you like our future stuff too, like what we come up with. We hope that we keep that momentum going and keep making cool stuff.
Something I've talked about numerous times on the show, and I don't know, I have to separate myself and my way of thinking from how I think other people think, because I know they're not always the same. But I'm very much like a loyalist person. I'm the kind of guy who finds a barber and I like that barber and I don't go to any other barber. Like, so I'm already sold on DreadX. If you guys put out a game, I'm probably going to get it. And then if I don't immediately like it, I'm going to then have this psychological battle with myself where I say like, no, I trust them. I need to reassess my thought process. So that's a good thing, for you, right? Maybe not for me. Maybe it'll drive me insane one day and I'll be like I'll live in a dumpster, but I don't know. That's a beautiful thing about brands like this, is that, you've created a personal relationship with your audience where like, I feel not obligated, not like you have a gun to my head, but I feel like I have a personal investment in wanting to support everything that y'all do.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's exactly like what we want. And it's also not by accident.
So you worked, you're an ad. I knew it all along.
Yeah, you kind of like, that's why like there is a stigma over ads, but I've been like saying it throughout this podcast. Like sometimes you need to be a shill. Like you did stuff for Realms Deep. You weren't like, sorry, Realms Deep, I can't sell myself. Like I'm a purist. Like you're like, no, like please listen to my podcast.
I'm
like
99% of the time on this show trying to talk indie developers into like, no, fucking make your money. Like do anything you can to pay yourself for what your work is. Like do not ever underestimate your own value. Because I see so many people do that. They sell a game for $1 because they're like, I don't really have an audience. I don't think I'm worth it. I'm like, yeah, but if, the same number of people, if it's, 1,000 people bought your game and really liked it and they felt more invested in it. Like if I pay $1 for a game and it's a pretty good game. Okay. Oh, my investment in that personally was $1. If I paid $10 for it, then my investment was $10 and I see a higher value in that product. Like, that's how the human brain works. And it's very difficult to make someone who is an artist understand that sometimes.
Yeah, I never went to business school. I did go to art school. And if you're an artist by yourself, they don't teach you that. But at art school, they do. At art school, they're like, be a shill. Like, be a business, sell yourself. You can do it with integrity. And plenty of people are indie devs that are making lots of money. They won't tell you how much money they make, but they've made lots of money. Dust has made lots of money. New Blood has made money, and they're great. They're fantastic. It's they're a perfect example that you can do both at the same time. Have a great community, and be like authentic. And that's what people are looking for. They're looking for that authenticity. And maybe with Xbox, you just don't feel that way from Xbox, which is like understandable because it's like a big umbrella. And honestly, all of the big three companies, it all depends on who is working at those companies. There's people in those companies. It's not just, people are like, they're a corporation, so I'll just pirate their games because I don't care. But there actually is people that work there that get paid by these companies, and they determine the programs and how they're run. And and all this other stuff. And so the problem is like when those people leave, hopefully the replacements have their same values and their same skill sets, but that doesn't always happen.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
If I mean, coming from my career background and also just, I don't want to get too Joe Rogan on you, but
I like it.
A corporation, right, or any large organization is exactly like that. If I walked into, I'm an executive at I don't know, Xbox, right? Or let's go further. I'm an executive of Exxon, and I sell gasoline. And I walked into the corporate meeting today in the morning, and I said, guys, it is morally wrong to sell gasoline and continue to pollute the earth. We all make billions of dollars every day, and we can afford to not do that anymore. So we should put all of our efforts into not doing that. I would be fired and replaced by lunch. Guarantee.
Yeah.
No question about it. That is the issue with these, major corporations, is that there's no one driving that wheel. It is a super organism. It has its own, the corporation itself, it's kind of hard to think about it this way from a human perspective, but it has its own consciousness. It treats people within it like they are cells in a body, and it will just, when you're no longer useful toward its goal, get rid of you and replace you. And so then a corporation's job is to just make money, and it's not necessarily to be, moral or, soulful or, have that real honest connection with its audience. I don't trust it to do that, because that is not what it wants. So even when you say there are people who work at this corp, and I want to support those people.
Yeah.
But I do know at the back of my mind that I'm not really supporting that person. I'm supporting the interest of that corporation.
Yeah, and that's why you can't just let the system use you. You also have to use the system, and use it to your advantage, because it doesn't do you any favors from being a purist or being. And I just want to say, I've worked at almost all indie companies. I haven't worked at a AAA company, and a lot of indie companies have done the exact same thing as those big corporations have done. And a lot of that has to do with they don't know how to run a business, and they're very incompetent. and so they just don't know how to, and because they don't know how to run things, they get scared, they get panicked, and they are very abusive towards you. And this is not just me. This is a lot of people I've talked to, and smaller indie dev teams to mid-size indie, I won't say who, obviously, but I'll just say that if you're going to work in the game industry, be very careful. But also being a solo developer is not a walk in the park either, right? They're always going to have problems no matter what. You're just trading some problems for others.
Right.
At DreadX, that's why Ted and I are trying to make this company with as much integrity as possible, where everybody feels welcome and happy, everyone's paid, and so yeah, I just want to say I remember working for this one guy at a small company. There was 4 people at this company, but he was also a Silicon Valley, tycoon at the same time, but he just had a small company. And I thought because he made money, he was in, he understands the all that other stuff, that he would take care of me, especially since it's a smaller company, because he would get to know me as a human and he'd want me part of his team. And he ended up cutting my pay within 2 months. Cutting my pay in half, and I was shocked. And when 2 months after that, he just fired me, and I was just oh, okay, I see what he does. To him, his business is a game to him. It's a hobby to him, because he's already made his millions of dollars. He already made his investment. So this company is just a cute little side project for him to do, something to pass the time. He doesn't actually need to make money. He doesn't actually care about the people working for him. He has no stakes or whatever. So he just treated me like a pawn and on his chessboard. And I was oh, this is a good learning experience. Okay. This is awful, but so keep that in mind, everybody, when you're looking for jobs. It's, those kind of situations do happen.
Well, no, we've had the same kind of internal conversation within the Keep, right? When I talk to my associates and the people that I work with, we look at, what's worth supporting as a community, and that's not even a financial investment necessarily. It's just what's worth our time to promote.
Yes. And
I've said the phrase multiple times about, a particular game or a particular developer, like that guy's not hungry. Like,
Yeah.
this is not his magnum opus. This is not, or she, either way, this is not what they're working on with every fiber of their being and every, every ounce of passion they have is not in this. And if it's not, then their game will not be successful, or their whatever it is that they try to do just won't be. And that's because, I don't know, to me, if I don't feel that passion, I'm not interested and I don't want to buy your product.
Exactly. You can't be mediocre.
Yeah, it's just this empty, soulless thing. And I don't want to hear Britney Spears. I want to hear fucking like some guy who poured his heart and soul into making the best goddamn guitar solo he could, or whatever. And that's what's important. The blues, jazz, not just, I don't know, algorithms that determine, okay, how do we get the largest possible group of people to pay attention to this, and then sell small amounts of it everywhere. That's what Walmart does. That's not what I want. I want to walk into a shop and buy a Boston cream pie from a guy who has been spending 80 years of his life perfecting his recipe for the Boston cream pie. Like,
handcrafted.
That's so much more rewarding. Yeah.
That's what I tell developers is, like, I ask them, I was like, why do I care about your game? And they're like, well, because I made it. And I'm like, that doesn't mean nothing to me. Like, I literally tell people all the time, well, I've been making games for 10 years. I don't care. Well, I used to work at this big company. I don't care. Like, well, my game is about dogs. I don't care. I mean, I love dogs, but like, just because your game has dogs on it doesn't mean I actually like want to play it. So, or like, that's like, people are like, I made a retro FPS, and I'm like, cool, but what about this retro FPS is different because you're in a market, and people are going to compare your game to other games. That's just going to happen. So you need to know what makes your game good, like what makes it interesting. And you also need to explain that as quickly as possible. And also, like, so get in the practice of pitching your game. Don't get just like, oh, this is too difficult, I'm going to go back to fixing like bugs or adding a feature to my game. Like, that's not going to help you make money. It's going to, I mean, maybe like, it helps to make your game better and polish it up. But what's going to help you make money is like you knowing how to say it in a context that people like understand and get on a relatable level. Yeah.
No, that's what that's the value that I see in forums like, like this podcast or, anything like this, where if you've spent an hour and a half listening to a conversation with someone who's telling you what their passion is, even if they're poor at explaining it, hopefully, my side of that is to help bring it out of them. And if you've spent that time, getting to know that person, then you have personally invested your time in that person. And then you are more likely to want to consume their art or their product. So I don't know. God, this has been a really steep learning curve just talking to you for how long we've been here? Like an hour and 20 minutes.
Sorry, but it's overwhelming.
No, it's good. I'm like, seriously, do you have any other topics you wanted to brush over before I get to my closing questions?
I just want to ask everybody that if you like a game, tell the developer. Like, go on Twitter, be like, dude, I like your game. Like, actually verbally tell the developer, because they will appreciate it and they will love it. Secondly, please write a review, because there's a lot of negativity on Steam. A lot of people like that they like the games, but they will still like talk trash about it and like give you a downvote because they think it's cute and funny. And that hurts the developers, it hurts the games for somebody to make that like ironic joke. Like they think it's harmless, but it's not. So please, if you like the DreadX collections, please leave a review. It doesn't have to be a 5 out of 5, but
just be honest. Don't hide behind your shroud. That's what I would say.
I will say too that we are going to do updates for the game. So if there's any like feedback you want to give us, like like tell us so that we can go fix the game. Like we have a Discord, and if you go to our Twitter, like we have our Discord, DreadXP @DreadXP_ is our Twitter. So if you go there, follow us, go to our Discord, like we have a feedback and bugs page. Please tell us the feedback. We'll fix the games. We'll update them. Yes.
Okay. So final questions for me. what are just like some basic run of the mill tips that you would give to someone who's listening to this? Maybe they're a content creator, maybe they're a, indie developer, whatever, like what are the basic boiled down, like 10 commandments of how to market yourself on social media?
Number one, you need to know your value. You need to know what it is that you're giving people. For example, a lot of Twitch streamers are like, I have a positive community and I play a variety of games. That doesn't tell me anything because everyone does that. If you're a pretty girl, and want to sell like an OnlyFans, okay, there's a bazillion pretty girls on OnlyFans. So if you're an artist, what makes your art stand out from everyone else? So you need to like see your value. What are you giving people? And if you're not, it's either entertainment or it's education. So if you feel like your stuff is just like everyone else's and you don't know how to break out of that mold, you don't know how to get, stop being so mediocre, then try to educate people. Like you've learned something. So, and put it in a context that's easy and digestible to learn. That's why so many like YouTube channels do like top 5 horror movies about pigs. I don't know. They have a lot of like top 5, top 10, scariest, goriest, interesting, like lay out your content, like really know what you're about and be focused on it. Like, don't go like all over the place with it. Like, I like this and I also like this and I also like this. Like everyone has like a variety of interests, things that they like. It doesn't mean you need to broadcast that on social media. You don't need to tell your whole life. You don't need to tell all your opinions. I would stay away from controversy and like negativity because people find that very unattractive and draining to be around. So try, like, I know that's like difficult sometimes, especially with like things like politics or whatever, but like, honestly, it's better to keep it to your friends and family in real life or like maybe a private conversation in Discord, but don't be that guy that's like angry all the time because like all the angry content creators that are like really full of criticism, they build an audience based off of that. And then they have a very toxic audience and the toxic audience will eventually turn on you. So yes, you can blow up fast and you'll get attention, but it's not sustainable if you're trying to make like a business and try to, to get respect from other people in your industry.
Yeah.
So.
No, I talked to my friend who is a, content creator recently into like, you got to have a Twitter, man. Like you really should.
Yeah.
Be a good way for you to get your shit out there. And then his immediate response, like as soon as he got on there, he's like, I really, really like, seeing other people's art, but I really don't like finding out other things about them that I didn't want to know. Like, so, people who do go on there and just start yammering about politics and that kind of shit. Like, I don't want to see your politics and your art in the same feed. Like, it's really a huge change. And that you could say one thing that could get someone to just like unfollow you and never learn about your content again.
Yep.
It could be that simple. Just because you made one, like, it's your right to have that opinion, but like, it doesn't belong here. It's not what people are looking for. Is kind of what I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I just made that mistake 2 days ago where somebody said something bad about me, like really nasty. And I was just like, I quote retweeted it and then I deleted it. But I was like really upset by it, like legitimately, but for this guy, like he's just trying to like be off the back of like some other like celebrity game dev. Like he's just trying to like cling onto his whatever. You get what I'm saying, like
Yeah.
And it was just like really frustrating, but I was like, I need to be above this because I actually have a platform here and I can't attack people because that just makes me look bad. Like it doesn't make him look bad. It makes me look bad because I'm the one with the actual platform. So I just deleted it. And most of the time I don't do that, but sometimes you get weak. Nobody's impervious. Some people get tired and worn out, and because when you have a platform, you have a target. That's what everyone who I know has a verified Twitter says. Like, I'm like, what's the benefit of having a check mark? They're like, there is no benefit of having a check mark except it puts a target on you, and people want to take you down just because you have a check mark. Like that is just what's going to happen.
I do not envy the position of any young lady of who's good looking or anything like that, trying to be taken seriously on social media because of the way people act like that. It's just, like, I'm not trying to be a white knight. It's just like, I don't envy that position at all. Like, people say the most disgusting, fucked up shit. And I'm like, how could you be so disciplined to be like, you know what? I'm not going to give this any attention. It's very difficult.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
I don't know, you can ignore it the first 10 times, but like
Yeah.
okay, so like I worked for Gearbox for like a month last year to help them with a campaign that I was working with them on and like
Mhm.
doing like Facebook stuff. Oh my god, like that the comments towards Gearbox was so terrible. They did eventually like have an opening to do like full-time community management. I could not work at Gearbox after doing that
Yeah.
campaign with them because their community was so toxic. And that's not
Yeah.
Gearbox's fault. Everybody at Gearbox is lovely. Like they're actually super nice, really good people. But the community was just so ugly and gross. And I had like nightmares, like PTSD from just that like short amount of time working with them because the abuse was so like intense and it was like hundreds of nasty comments a day and a lot of assumptions about game dev in the industry that just were not true, but they all like believed it and were told each other and they and so I was like I can't handle that. So
Yeah.
again, be careful with the audience you have, and uh it's okay to walk away from social media. And also it's like if you want to join social media, please mute and block people. I do it all the time. I block people left and right, and I don't feel bad about it at all.
Yeah. Were there any more of the 10 Commandments before I go to the next person here?
There probably is, but not the top of my head. I'll just want to say,
Okay.
like, show your value, what it is about you that makes you, like, that's actually important. Focus, don't be negative, like, be positive, and practice that. Oh, yeah, and everything lives on the internet forever. Everything lives on the internet forever.
Yeah.
People can screenshot you. People can even fake that. And so your character, your reputation is the most important thing. Because I can't say names, but I know a developer out there who basically like brushed off people, kind of was just like, I'm a big deal, like I make money, so like I'm important. And then this developer eventually wanted to work with other people and do collaborations. But at this point, everyone's like everyone who knows, like everybody who's in the know is like, I don't want to collaborate with you because you brushed me off earlier, Like, I don't think you're a nice person. So, like, and now you're nice to me because you want something from me. So that's why your character is everything. Your reputation is everything. And it's just not worth it to be a jerk.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. All right.
It.
I don't have a whole lot else for you. I think this has been a really cool learning experience. I hope this is a career field that, is so important to not just the gaming industry, but to, everything in our modern society. And I feel like it goes highly underrepresented. I literally like your story about how you didn't get credited for anything until DreadX2 was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So I want to do more stuff like this too. And you've been a very valuable teacher.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So much appreciated, and you take care of yourself.
Thank you.
And when you see Ted next, give him a big old kiss on the mouth for me.
Ooh. Wait, no, I can't do that.
Oh, no. Tell him it's for me, though.
Okay. I'll just tell him.
All right. Thank you very much to Starlight Skyes for that incredible conversation. Seriously, I can't express how much I learned. It was so cool. Also, thank you to everybody who supports The Keep, specifically our Patreon supporters, Paul, Moose, Dots, Zach, Alexander, Brad, Red Eyes, Anthony, Robert, Jack, Brandy, Fred. You're all incredible. I fucking love you. The John Gakathala loves you. And if you're listening to this and you're like, yo, how do I support The Keep? Head over to inthekeep.com and sit your ass down on the support tab. It's right there. We've got all kinds of things. We've got affiliate links for you to click on. We've got Patreon. We've got PayPal, all that. But until next time, keep it short and sweet. Stay in the keep.